Okay, so it looks like someone's been doing their homework. A deep dive into Rocket Lab, articles, X posts, the whole shebang. What really jumps out is all this stuff on the Neutron rocket, and wow, they're doing some really interesting things with satellites.
Yeah, they really are. Rocket Lab is a pretty cool company, I think. They're forging their own path, not just following the pack.
Forging their own path, huh? I like that. So first off, I gotta ask, Rocket Lab's got this really global footprint. They're not just in the US, they've got facilities in New Zealand and Canada too.
Right.
Is that just for the international flair, or is there a strategic reason for that?
Oh, it's definitely strategic. Multiple launch sites, so that's two in New Zealand and one in Virginia. It gives them flexibility that most companies just don't have. Less weather delays, more launch windows, and they can access a wider range of orbits.
Okay, so they're kind of hedging their bets, spreading out the risk, but launches can be delayed for tons of reasons. What about supply chain stuff? We've all seen how that can really mess things up.
That's where their distributed manufacturing model comes in. They've got production facilities all over U.S., New Zealand, Canada.
Yeah.
So if one area has a problem, they just shift production, keep things moving. It's all about building resilience.
Resilience, that's the word. Okay, so they've got the global stage set. But what about the stars of the show, the rockets?
Right.
You were talking about the Electron before. It seems like their workhorse. What's the story with this little rocket that could?
Yeah, so the Electron is perfectly designed for this specific niche, small to medium payloads. And it's honestly been incredibly successful. As of February 2025, 59 successful launches.
59.
Yep. And over 20 more planned for this year alone.
That is seriously impressive. But how do they compare to, the big guys? SpaceX. They seem to be launching rockets every other day.
Yeah, well, SpaceX is kind of playing a different game, right?
Wow.
Heavier payloads, high volume launches. It's like if SpaceX is a massive cargo ship, hauling huge amounts, but it needs time to load and maneuver.
Right.
Rocket Lab is more like a nimble speedboat, perfect for those smaller, more frequent deliveries.
I love that analogy. Okay, smaller payloads, quicker turnaround. It's a different approach, but hey, it's working for them. But let's talk about their Neutron rocket, the one you marked as really interesting. Why all the hype?
Oh, Neutron is definitely generating a lot of buzz. Reusable, much like SpaceX's Falcon 9, but payload capacity of 13,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit.
Okay.
That's something like 60 times what the Electron can handle.
Wow.
So they're aiming for that sweet spot in the market.
Yeah, stepping into the big leagues, but keeping that Rocket Lab agility. But I've also seen some stuff about delays. Were there any hiccups?
Well, the initial target was a 2024 launch, so yeah, there have been some delays. I
Yeah.
mean, building a rocket of this scale, it's really complex. The Archimedes engine, that's going to power Neutron's first stage. They've done some big redesigns. Actually managed to cut down the weight and simplify components, which is great for reliability. They're actually testing it now at NASA's Stennis Space Center. But
Yeah.
yeah, any ambitious project, there are risks.
Risks in terms of?
Well, further delays, those could affect their profitability goals.
Yeah.
Markets definitely watching to see if they can deliver on their promises.
So the pressure's on. And, speaking of doing things differently, you marked vertical integration as a key concept. What does that even mean, and why should I, as the listener, care?
You should care because it's a huge advantage, almost like their secret weapon. Imagine you're building a house, okay? So instead of hiring separate contractors for every little thing, plumbing, electrical, roofing, you have one company that handles it all themselves. That's vertical integration. And Rocket Lab's doing this, but for space. They design and manufacture not just the rockets, but a lot of the stuff that goes into them, even the satellites.
Wow. So they're building a lot of those pieces themselves, not just putting them together. I can see how that would give them a lot of control. But how does that play out in the real world?
Okay, so take their deal with Global Star, right? They built 17 satellites for them, and mostly using their own in-house components. This level of control, it means cost savings, faster turnaround, and they can customize things for their clients in ways that other companies can't.
So they're like a one-stop shop for space, design to deployment, the whole thing. That's pretty impressive. It makes you wonder, what does this mean for their competitors?
It definitely sets them apart. Most companies rely on this whole network of suppliers and contractors.
Right.
But Rocket Lab's approach, it gives them a level of agility and cost effectiveness that's hard to beat.
Makes sense. They're controlling more of the process, making them more responsive. But it's not just about launching stuff for other people. They're building their own satellites too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not just a launch provider. They're a satellite company. They've got this diverse range of satellite platforms, Photon, Pioneer, Lightning, Explorer, each with a different purpose. And this is where that vertical integration really shines. They can design and build these satellites to very specific requirements, which opens up a lot of possibilities.
So it's like they're not just selling a product, they're selling a solution. That's a powerful position to be in. Give me an example, a project that really showcases that expertise.
Have you heard about their work with Varda Space Industries? They're building a satellite to support a space capsule, and, wait for it, it's for microgravity manufacturing.
Microgravity manufacturing, okay, you've got my attention. What exactly does that even mean?
It's like, imagine a mini factory in space.
Hmm.
This capsule, attached to a Photon satellite, it uses the unique conditions of microgravity to manufacture things that you just can't create on Earth.
Wow.
Pharmaceuticals, fiber optics, even new types of alloys, maybe. Cutting-edge stuff.
That is mind-blowing. So they're not just launching things up there, they're like building the platform for a whole new industry in space. It seems like they offer a pretty compelling package.
Yeah, they do. End-to-end solutions, flexible launch schedules, fast turnaround times, competitive pricing, proven track record. I mean, it's a combination that's attracting a lot of attention.
And it's not just about the tech, it's about the trust they've built, especially compared to some of the newer, less proven players. Their government contracts, including those from the U.S. Space Force, those really show their credibility. But I'm curious, with all this innovation, how are they doing financially?
Well, as with any company in this high-growth, high-investment phase, things are interesting. Not profitable yet, but their revenue is growing rapidly. They brought in over $300 million in 2024, and analysts are projecting close to $600 million in 2025.
So a steep upward trajectory, but still in the red. What's their plan to get to profitability?
Well, their big bet is on Neutron. They're thinking that this larger reusable rocket will really cut down their launch costs, let them capture a larger chunk of that commercial launch market, become profitable in 2026.
Okay, so Neutron is like the key to unlocking their financial future. High stakes. Their valuation's been pretty volatile, right?
Oh yeah, their stock price soared in 2024, but it's come down a bit since then. Investors are excited about their potential, but they're also aware of the risks. Any delays with Neutron, a slowdown in the space economy, things like that could have a big impact.
It's that classic growth stock story. Lots of potential, but also a bumpy ride. They're not the only ones in the small to medium payload space, are they? Who else are they up against?
Oh, definitely. There are other companies trying to get a piece of that pie. Firefly Aerospace, Relativity Space, Astra. It's a competitive landscape.
So what sets Rocket Lab apart from those rivals? What are their key advantages?
Well, I think their biggest advantages are their experience, that vertical integration we talked about, and their track record. They've been launching rockets since 2017. That's a lot of knowledge and expertise built up.
Experience is definitely valuable in this business, and we've talked about how their vertical integration makes them stand out, that control over their supply chain. What about their track record? How does that compare to the competition?
Well, over 59 successful launches. That's more than any of their direct competitors. And they've shown they can launch often and reliably. That's huge for clients who need to get their stuff into space fast and without any problems.
So the veterans of the group with a proven track record and a pretty unique way of looking at space exploration.
That's a great way to put it. And it's good to remember that the space industry is still fairly young.
Yeah.
There's room for more than one winner. And I think Rocket Lab will be a major player for a long time to come.
Sounds like you're pretty optimistic about their future. What are you most excited to see from them in the next few years?
Oh, that's easy. The first launch of Neutron. Seeing that rocket lift off, that'll be a huge moment. Not just for Rocket Lab, but for the whole space industry. Like a new era of space flight,
Yeah.
More accessible, more affordable.
It's going to be a nail biter, that's for sure. But if they can pull it off, it could really change the game for them and everyone else.
Oh, absolutely.
There's one more thing I wanted to get into. Our listener seems particularly interested in the work they're doing with satellites. We talked about microgravity manufacturing, but what are some other cool things they're doing?
That's a great question. One area that's really fascinating is Earth observation satellites. They're launching constellations of these small but really powerful satellites that can track everything.
Mhm.
Deforestation, illegal fishing, you name it, even crop yields, infrastructure development.
So it's not just launching things into space, but using those things to gather data that can help us understand and manage our planet better.
Exactly. It's using space to solve real problems down here and to create a more sustainable future.
That's incredible. And it seems like they're just getting started. What are some other trends in the space industry that you're keeping an eye on?
One that I find really exciting is this increasing miniaturization of satellites. Instead of those huge, expensive satellites, we're seeing smaller, more agile ones that can be launched way more often and way cheaper. And that's opening up all kinds of new possibilities.
So, like the smartphone revolution, but for space.
Exactly. Just like smartphones put powerful computing in everyone's pocket, these small satellites are making space more accessible to a lot more people.
Love that analogy. It makes me think, what does all of this mean for the future of space exploration?
It's a really exciting time to be following the space industry. We're seeing all these advances in technology, that entrepreneurial spirit, and this growing understanding of what space can do for us down here. And Rocket Lab is right at the forefront of all of this, pushing the boundaries, innovating, and inspiring a whole new generation.
Rocket Lab, they're not afraid to dream big and then actually make those dreams happen. But beyond the tech and the business, there's one more thing I want to touch on. It's the human side of things. Like, what's it actually like to work at Rocket Lab? What kind of people are they attracting?
Yeah, it seems like they've built this really unique and kind of fun company culture.
Fun. In the world of rockets and satellites, that's not the first thing that comes to mind.
I know, right? But from what I've read, they've got this contagious energy. They're all about pushing the limits, taking on challenges, but also not taking themselves too seriously.
So it's okay to celebrate wins, but also, like, learn from mistakes without being afraid to, mess up.
Exactly. And that kind of environment, it attracts a certain kind of person, you know?
Yeah.
They seem to draw in people who are curious, ambitious, the kind who want to make a real difference, people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty.
So it's not just about having the right skills, it's about, like, having the right attitude, that thirst for knowledge, the drive to innovate, that passion for space.
Exactly. And that's what makes Rocket Lab so interesting. You know, they're not just building rockets, they're building a team of people who are passionate about exploring the unknown.
It's inspiring to see a company that values both sides of the equation, the tech and the human element. It's not just about the machines, it's about the people behind them, the ones who dare to dream big and then, actually go out and make it happen.
And that's what makes Rocket Lab such a compelling story. They're showing the world that space exploration isn't just for governments and giant corporations anymore. It's about individuals, about ideas, about that relentless pursuit of, well, the extraordinary.
Well said. They're a real testament to what we can achieve with human ingenuity. And they've definitely carved out their own space, no pun intended. It seems like they're in a great position to shape the future of, well, space.
I agree. They've shown that being agile, innovative, and making space more accessible, that's a powerful combination.
It's been a fascinating deep dive into this company, that's for sure. We've covered their global operations, their innovative rockets, those incredible satellites, their business model, their commitment to sustainability, and of course, that incredible culture they've cultivated.
We've covered a lot.
We have. And you know what? I think we've only scratched the surface.
Oh, for sure. They're always evolving, pushing boundaries. Who knows what they'll accomplish next?
It's an exciting time to be following the space industry, and Rocket Lab is definitely one to watch. So, as you continue your own exploration of Rocket Lab, here's something to think about. What role will this company play in taking humanity beyond Earth? Will they be the ones to help us take that next giant leap? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be an incredible journey to witness. It's their vision for the future. They're not just thinking about, launching stuff up there. It's about what we do, if at all, once it's in the space.
That's a great point. It's not just about getting to space, right? It's about what we can accomplish when we're there. And this kind of ties into what we talked about earlier, that idea of Rocket Lab making space more accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
They're really opening it up to more players. It's not just governments and huge corporations anymore. Smaller companies, universities, research institutions, they can all get involved. It's like, think about the early days of the internet.
Okay.
Suddenly, anyone with a good idea could make a website and reach the whole world. Rocket Lab is doing that, but for space.
So they're like democratizing space. That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
What kind of impact do you think that'll have?
I mean, it could be huge. Imagine a world where universities can send up their own research satellites, or startups can test new tech in space, without needing like $1 billion budget.
Right.
That kind of access It leads to more innovation, more competition, and ultimately it makes things cheaper for everyone.
So it's not just launching satellites, it's about creating this whole new ecosystem up there. It's pretty exciting to think about the possibilities.
It really is. And it's not just about science and research either. Because they focus on smaller payloads, it means they can do more specialized missions.
Mm.
So instead of launching one giant satellite that does a bunch of things, you can launch a bunch of smaller ones, each with a very specific job.
Okay, so instead of one Swiss Army knife, you've got a whole toolbox.
Exactly. And we're already seeing this happening. Rocket Lab's launched satellites for Earth observation, communications, tracking ships at sea, you name it. And with this whole space as a service model, things are about to get even more interesting.
Space as a service. I've heard that term, but honestly, I'm not sure I totally get it. Can you break it down for me?
Sure, it's a pretty new idea, but it's gaining traction. Basically, it's about providing access to space-based services without needing customers to build and manage their own satellites, like subscribing to cloud computing instead of building your own data center.
So instead of buying the whole cow, you just buy the milk.
Exactly. It's about making space accessible to industries and organizations that wouldn't normally have the resources or the know-how to do it themselves.
Okay, starting to get the picture now. Give me some examples, like real world stuff.
Okay, imagine a farmer using data from space to figure out the best way to water their crops, or a shipping company tracking their cargo from orbit, or even like disaster relief, using satellites to assess damage and coordinate aid after an earthquake or something. There are tons of possibilities.
So it's not just about sending people to Mars anymore. It's about using space to solve problems and create opportunities here on Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
And it seems like Rocket Lab is like right in the middle of this shift.
They are, and you can see it reflected in their government contracts. They've got a bunch with the U.S. Space Force, including missions for the Space Test Program and the Tactically Responsive Space Program.
Those sound pretty serious. What are those programs all about?
The Space Test Program is all about evaluating new technologies in space. So like testing new propulsion systems or sensors that could be used on future missions. And the Tactically Responsive Space Program, that's about being able to quickly deploy assets into space when they're needed. So like responding to threats or emerging needs.
So being able to react quickly, like almost like having a rapid response team in space.
Exactly.
Can you give me an example how that might play out in the real world?
Sure. Imagine there's a natural disaster, like a hurricane or a wildfire. A tactically responsive space satellite could be launched super fast to give like real-time imagery and data to help with the relief efforts. Or even think about monitoring troop movements in a conflict zone.
Okay.
You could provide really valuable intelligence to people on the ground.
That's pretty amazing. It sounds like a total game changer when it comes to like understanding what's going on and responding quickly.
It is. In Rocket Lab, they're perfectly set up to play a major role in these programs. They're agile, they can launch quickly, it's a natural fit.
They've also got a good track record with NASA, right?
Yeah, they've worked with NASA on a bunch of projects, including the Capstone mission to the moon, which, by the way, is testing a new lunar orbit that could be used for a future lunar space station.
It's really impressive how they're working with like both government agencies and commercial clients. What kind of companies are they launching satellites for on the commercial side of things?
Oh, their client list is super diverse. They've launched satellites for BlackSky, which provides Earth observation data, Spire Global, they track maritime traffic and weather patterns. Planet Labs, they operate a whole constellation of Earth imaging satellites.
So they're really covering all the bases. It's obvious their business model is working or attracting a lot of different players, but let's talk money for a second. What's their financial situation looking like these days?
Well, like a lot of companies in this phase, high growth, lots of investment, it's a balancing act. They're not profitable yet, but their revenue is climbing pretty fast. Over $300 million in 2024, and analysts are predicting almost double that, close to $600 million for this year.
Okay, so steep upward trajectory, but still in the red for now. What's their plan for getting to profitability?
Their big bet is Neutron. They think this larger, reusable rocket will really bring their launch costs down, which would let them get a bigger piece of that commercial launch market. They're hoping to be profitable in 2026, but a lot depends on Neutron, obviously, and the overall demand for launch services.
So Neutron really is the key to their future, it sounds like. High stakes. And their valuation, it's been kind of all over the place, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Their stock price was soaring in 2024, but it's come back down to earth a bit since then. Investors are excited, but they also know the risks. Any delays with Neutron or if the space economy slows down, that could have a big impact.
It's the story of a lot of growth companies. Big
Yeah.
potential, but also a lot of uncertainty. They're not alone in this market, though, right? Who are their main competitors?
There are a few other companies competing for that small to medium payload launch market, like Firefly Aerospace, Relativity Space, and Astra. It's definitely a competitive space, and each company has its own strengths and weaknesses.
So, what sets Rocket Lab apart from the pack? What gives them an edge?
I'd say their biggest advantage is their experience. They've been at this since 2017. That's a lot of knowledge they've built up over the years.
Experience is definitely a plus in this industry for sure. And we talked about how their vertical integration gives them that extra control over their supply chain. What about their track record? How does it stack up against the competition?
Well, they've had over 59 successful launches. That's more than any of the others, and they've shown they can launch often and reliably. That's a big deal for clients who need to get their payloads into space quickly and, without any issues.
So they're the veterans of the bunch with a proven track record and a unique way of approaching space exploration.
That's a great way to put it. And, it's important to remember that the space industry is still pretty young. There's room for lots of companies to be successful, and I think Rocket Lab will be a major player for years to come.
Well, it's been an absolutely fascinating deep dive into this company. We've covered their global reach, their innovative rockets and satellites, their business model, their commitment to sustainability, and the amazing culture they've built. It seems like Rocket Lab is a company that's not afraid to dream big and then make those dreams a reality. It's truly inspiring to see a company pushing the boundaries of what's possible in space and doing it with such passion and a genuine sense of fun. So, as you continue to explore the world of Rocket Lab, keep this in mind. They're a shining example of what human ingenuity and determination can achieve. And who knows what incredible things they'll accomplish next. It's an exciting time to be following the space industry, and Rocket Lab is definitely a company worth watching closely.